I've always been inspired to tell stories about love. That's where I've always wanted to go. So to me, PassionFlix is wonderful as it is right now, telling romance stories. But I have a goal to, and it's what I've always wanted to do, is to tell any kind of story about love.
All right, welcome everyone. This is Tesla Owners of Silicon Valley, and we are blessed today with Tosca Musk, the CEO and founder of PassionFlix. And you have had a big week, and we just found out you literally got in last night, but obviously with the big launch of The Air He Breathes. So congratulations. I actually watched it on the flight here. So yeah, I enjoyed it thoroughly, but tell us a little bit about your week and what the launch was like and the whole premiere. And the funny thing is, she was actually in LA. So I was thinking, downtown Atlanta, but you were in...
I was in LA.
Yeah.
I was in LA, yeah. It was really great. We held it in Santa Monica, and then we had the after party at the Huntley Hotel, and that was really fun. We've done that once before. This week, we premiered a movie called The Air He Breathes, as you mentioned, by Brittany Cherry. And it's, I'm impressed that you watched it on a plane. Did you cry at all?
There was actually a couple of times I had to I'm probably not the best person as far as I definitely get those moments where, you tear up a little bit. Partially actually, on a personal note, my mom passed away when I was 16. So having both parents, actually their families pass away, it kind of just hit home a little bit. So yeah. That was actually, it was really touching.
Yeah, thank you. I think that it's really beautiful to be able to tell stories where we are tapping into all different types of emotion. And this one in particular is dealing with loss and grief, and how we deal with grief and how we're able to try and move past it so that we might have a second chance at love. Yeah. And that's what the story really focuses on. So I was very happy with it, and it's very exciting. People are loving it, and the author is just so amazing, and she's so happy with it, so that makes me happy.
Yeah, no, that's truly amazing. Part of the whole, I think, PassionFlix is all about literally kind of the soup to nuts, almost like farm to table in a lot of ways, where you have the author so involved. What was that like, especially with this latest premiere that you've had working with this author?
Well, so PassionFlix takes best-selling romance novels and turns them into movies and series. That's what we do in a nutshell. And we take it all the way from the option of the books. We read the book, option it, write the screenplay, make the movie, deliver it on PassionFlix. That's what we do, soup to nuts. The way that we like to work specifically is with the author. So we will write a script. Once it's gone through our pass, then we will send it to the author. Do they have any notes on this? Are we missing anything that a fan wants to see? And then they will make their notes on it, and then we will go and start casting. Hopefully it's happening that fast. Sometimes it takes a little longer. This one, I think the script was written, probably a year ago, but then we optioned this book 3 years ago, but then we had, COVID shutdowns, and then we had union strikes, and so it just kept delaying. And the amazing thing about this author is that she just stuck with us. She's like, we're going to make this movie, and it's going to be really wonderful. Awesome. And it truly paid off. And so, so then we go through the whole casting process, and we work with the author. Does this character look and feel like the character that's in your book? And then working with them, we cast the movie. I brought on a really wonderful director who has a delicate touch. This is a very sensitive story, so we want to make sure that the hand that's taking us through the story, the director is, capable of that very delicate emotion. And Rachel did a phenomenal job, and the actors were fantastic. The author, as I said, is super happy about it. So
that's almost all that matters, right?
That's all that matters. Well, yeah, and then hopefully the audience likes it too.
Of course, yeah.
But at the end of the day, when you do book adaptations, the only person that we can please is the author. Yeah. Because I can't please millions of people we can try, but it's, I can't get into every single person's head and go, oh, that's how you pictured them. Oh, that's how you pictured them. And because it's just not possible. But if I am pleasing the author and they can, if they believe this is their story, this is their book, then that's what we can present the viewers, and the viewers agree for the most part.
Yeah. How would you say, like, when you look at a book or when you're reading books, like, how do you pick the parts to include versus not being able to include? Because, a 500-page novel versus a 200-page novel. Because I was just thinking, even in The Air He Breathes, like, there was that stark moment where he obviously, I think they're in the automotive shop, and he shares, obviously that he's the one behind everything. And there was, like, that's where the twist kind of, like, came. But how do you take a novel and then, pick those moments to just like include in the movie?
So taking a novel and deciding what to keep in and what to put out is very hard. Because when you read a novel, there's so much, and you might actually really relate to this character. And then when you're coming through the adaptation, you're like, well, that character isn't really needed. And so we don't need to have that backstory or that whole arc because it's not needed for this, particular telling. Fortunately, it doesn't happen too much, but it can happen. And so, it's very hard. But you have to focus on the main point of this story, which is the connection of two people, because we're telling love stories. So we have the connection of two people and the reason for them having that relationship and their communication and how they are able to decide to stay together or move forward in a relationship. So we have to focus that as our primary, and then so we're primarily their romance story. And then we look at what's going to support that. So there are always friends, and there's work, and there are circumstances around it. So what supports that primary relationship? And anything that, obviously we want to try and add in some of the other bits because it creates more of a full environment and full life. But if we aren't able to include them all because of time, then those are the parts that we'll have to pull out.
That's really telling of, but also too, it's a lot, right? Because I can imagine reading a lot, and then it's more of like these 2 or 3 characters could send the whole message of the movie or whatever down a different path. Starting kind of from the roots of wanting to get into filmmaking and your whole passion for this. Where did it all start? Tell us literally as a kid. Was there a moment when you were growing up that kind of just led in, you're like, I want to open this door of just starting my own company and even getting into filmmaking?
Yeah. I was living in Durban. We had a home in Durban after my mom left my father, and there was this little, concrete, small, local town screening room place just down the hill from where we lived, and we went down there to go and watch this movie, and the movie that they were playing was called Xanadu. And I loved that movie. I came out of that movie and I was like, this is the best movie I've ever seen. When I get older, I'm going to be a filmmaker and I'm going to make people disappear and reappear. and
what
so
age was that?
I was 5.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And so I should have gone into visual effects. I didn't. I clearly like disappearing, reappearing. But I went into storytelling. And so I would go around, I would film, when I eventually did get a little camera, I would film everyone and create little stories, but mostly I'd write plays, put on plays. Then I got into theater. And then at 18, I started working for a studio called Alliance in Toronto. And then I went to school at UBC and I studied film there, and then every summer I'd go back and work for Alliance. Graduated, worked on a TV series called Grand Illusions, The Story of Magic, as the production secretary, and then left and moved to LA again at some point, and then went back to working for that same studio again because I was like, wow, I was just constantly working for that studio. I did. I worked for them for a lot, and then left them and made my first feature called Puzzled when I was 25.
Okay. And then obviously PassionFlix comes into the mix. I think in 2017 is when it officially started. But what led from, at 25 to even getting to the point where you're starting this, and obviously even dealing with the rough time during COVID where everything was shut down and sounds like strikes as well.
Yeah. So, I went from making my first feature to trying very hard to get another feature off the ground. It was almost impossible. It was very hard, and it still is very hard, to be honest, as a woman to get a job as a director. I don't know why we're given Lifetime or Hallmark movies, which is great. I'm very grateful to them, but those are the options that we have for the most part. So I went into producing. So I started producing features, smaller features, independent films, and then also started producing a lot of films for Lifetime and Hallmark, because that's what we could do. I actually then left and I did for about 5 years, I did a video podcast called Tiki Bar TV, which was the #1 downloaded video podcast, right? This is how old it is, right? We called it video podcast. It was the #1 video podcast downloaded in the world in 2005 after Steve Jobs used us to promote the iPod with video in his keynote speech. Yeah. And so it was put on every iPod, every video iPod. So that was very cool.
That's a cool moment.
That's a cool moment. The creator of that series, Jeff McPherson, is like just brilliant. Anyway, so I did that, and then I went back into filmmaking, and it was really hard because you're trying to come up with these ideas and pitch them to the network to try and see how you can get them made, because you have to get somebody to finance them. Mm-hmm. And the more I wanted to tell stories about romance, the less that people would buy. They'd buy things that were, more woman in jeopardy or something like that. Mm-hmm. I made one movie, and I made a couple of movies for these networks, and they did really well. And then we pitched them another one that had to do with karma and reincarnation of a love interest, and they're like, no, we can't deal with anything that might, defy God. And I was like, okay, I don't really see how that is I don't see how it's defying God, but okay. And then I was always a big fan of romance novels, read them all the time, watched a lot of romance movies with my mom growing up, and then, because I couldn't get them sold, we created our own streaming platform.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we're like, okay, well, it's the #1 selling genre in the world. I know a lot of women that would love to see these movies adapted. No network is going to actually make these because they're too risque. They defy God. I don't know. But they're too risque. Basically, they're too risque. They have women in every kind of role. So anywhere from, you're a student to you're a CEO. They have them in every kind of role, and it's all about these relationships that these people go through, and I couldn't get them sold. So, the only way to do it is to go, which I learned from Tiki Bar TV, is you go direct to consumer. So if we can start our own streaming platform in a time, it was 2016 when we founded the company, and we launched in 2017. But the idea is that at that point, if I'm going to go and raise money to make one film, I might as well go and raise money to make multiple films. Yep. And then mitigate that risk, and also control the distribution, and go direct to these millions and millions and millions of women that really want to watch romance.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And
no one was really doing that at that time, right?
No.
So you found an open market with really no competition, right?
Yeah, well, there are some niche platforms now that are making, niche content. So you see the niche platforms like Shudder and Acorn and all those companies, but they're doing horror, or they're doing British content and things like that. There is nobody else doing romance. We are the only romance adaptation platform.
Yep.
And what is it about this community? Because really that's what this is about, community and storytelling. And, as Tesla owners of Silicon Valley, we're about community as well, right? It's just a different community.
Yeah.
But what is it about that community that really appealed to you? I mean, you talk about the millions of women who really align with this genre. So tell us about this community of women that you appeal to.
That's a great question. The women who love romance are, they're die-hard fans of the genre. Yeah. And they chat and share. And we use these books as a way to really explore all of our emotions and be able to have emotional freedom. When we read these books, it's an incredible escape in a world where we have to, control our emotions and be strong and, hide some things. And then you can go into these books, and these books they're like a roller coaster of emotions, and you're guaranteed a happy ending at the end. This is the thing about romance. You're guaranteed a happy ending. Yeah. Sometimes that's a hopeful ending, and I can deal with that, but, you better let us know beforehand. And so for me, this community of women who love romance we all can share in this sort of, I guess it's like a secret world of knowing that we can explore this romance, these emotions together. And we've all gone through these emotions together because we've experienced this in a book. And we've all come out at the end with this happy ending. That's a great question. I'm like, why do I love them so much? They are so great. And it's just people who love love.
Yeah, that's love. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
People who love love. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And it's just wonderful to spend time with them. And so we have all these passionistas now that we call them.
I love that, yeah.
And they call themselves, the passionistas. And, and we have an event called PassionCon where we invite these passionistas to come, and we spend 3 nights and, 4 days doing just basically hanging out. And we have, we talk about who's our favorite book boyfriend. By the way, do you know what a book boyfriend is?
I think I'm learning something new today.
You are. So when you read these romance novels, and everybody has a favorite novel, and in it you have your favorite, whoever the male character is. And I guess if men are reading it, they could have a book girlfriend. But whoever that favorite male character is, that's your book boyfriend. So you're like, oh, well, my book boyfriend is Mr. Darcy, or whoever it might be. And some people might like, Colton Donovan because they want a little bit more, race car, edgy, or they want, And so it's just fun to talk about it that way.
Yeah. It's almost like an escapism from the real world and the real lives. Like their husbands are probably not like Darcy or whomever, right? So it's almost like this other parallel universe that they can live in and play around in and imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I guess, like any Harry Potter fan, right? So you can live in that and you can play around in that too. But the most wonderful thing is that most of these husbands and boyfriends are extremely supportive of women that read romance novels and watch PassionFlix movies because they're so happy.
Yep.
Women are extremely happy. When we read romance novels and we have the support of our loved ones next to us, we're really happy.
Yeah. Happy wife, happy life?
Happy wife, happy life, for sure.
Yeah.
What would you say were some inspirational moments kind of that led you to like get into this niche kind of market as far as like just romance, obviously being, the biggest seller for like novels, but just were there like pivotal moments throughout your life that just kind of like led you to getting to like, hey, I want to start this? And you kind of mentioned several, but is there any like ones that just come to mind?
I've always been inspired to tell stories about love. That's where I've always wanted to go. So to me, PassionFlix is wonderful as it is right now, telling romance stories. But I have a goal to, and it's what I've always wanted to do, is to tell any kind of story about love. So we can have brotherly love, sisterly love, friendship love, parental love, children, love of your children. Stories about love, I think, are missing from our world. We used to have a lot of them. We don't have them anymore. Now it's always about heartache and pain and suffering, and somebody's hurting you, or somebody's going to do something to you, and there's something evil happening in the world. And I don't think that that's how the world is.
Yeah.
I think the world is people who love each other, or want to love each other, or want to get to know each other and create more connection. And so I have always wanted to create more stories about connection, love, communication, and so that's what has kept me in this world of PassionFlix, for sure. I love romance novels. I want to tell all the romance novels, all of the romance novel stories, by the way. I'll take them all. But I think that there's so much opportunity to tell stories about connection, communication, and love.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the how you want to like corner the market, of course, but how do you select the novels that you want to make movies for? Like, what does that selection process look like?
Well, when we first started, it was meeting the authors and then, begging them to let us adapt their books. So it started with that. Please take a chance on me. I can do a good job. And then, fortunately, a few of them did. And then everybody else was like, oh, they do a good job. And it's nice to work with them. So that was very helpful, just getting a few people to say yes, because it's hard, right? These are your best-selling books. Are you going to trust this new filmmaker with your story?
Yeah.
It's not, a major studio at the time, and so that was the hard thing at the beginning. Now we're very fortunate. We do have a lot of books that we have optioned, and we have a lot of authors that are excited to work with us. Awesome. It is great. How we tend to choose each book moving forward, we're going on to which one are we going to make next? It comes down to what story have we just told? And do we want to tell us a different story next time? So we've told, we did a romantic comedy at the beginning of the year. All right, well, now we're doing a tissues and ice cream movie, and a crying movie, an emotional, very deeply emotional.
Was that the Wallbanger?
Wallbanger was a romantic comedy. And then we have The Air He Breathes, which is very emotional. They both have emotions, but it's like very... sad emotions and heartbreaking emotions. And then our next story is a romance that has a little bit of a thriller aspect or suspense aspect into it. And then the one after that is a rock star romance. So we want to try and tap into all genres within the romance genre. And so rather than making one thing for everybody and only dealing with drama or only doing rom-coms, we like to pepper it with different types of romance and tap into different people within the romance community. And the one thing that is really great is that so many of our viewers came on, they came on to watch Gabriel's Inferno as an example. It's a very big series for us, which is it's a slow burn, quite dramatic. And they came on to watch that, but then they're like, oh, but there's these other authors, and maybe I'll watch Hollywood Dirt, which is more of a dramedy type story, or maybe I'll read The Air He Breathes because that's the next book that we're going to make. And so they are able to find new books through us, and new stories through us, which I love as well.
Oh, I was just going to say, and now you do something about vampires.
And now we're doing vampires, I know. So we're going to be doing the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, which is a huge series for us. And I'm very grateful to this author for giving us an opportunity because, it's a very big series. It's been going for about 25 years now. I think it's 25 years is the anniversary next year. And she's on book 23 of this series, and it's just an incredible community. Yeah. So, I'm very excited about making this.
You want to talk about the casting call we were joking about?
Sure. We can talk a little bit about we did a worldwide open casting, and there are some people that were great, and we really wanted to try and make work, and some people that we actually did hire through the open casting call. But there were a lot of people that, to me, it is quite funny that they submit themselves because our characters are above 6'1" and they're warrior vampires. Yeah. And we had some very small, thin people, and I love how they see themselves in life. Like, I see myself as a 6'6" giant, muscular vampire, and I'm like, but you're 5'4" and you're very thin. So we couldn't hire them. They didn't try out for every role.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They didn't just apply for one role.
No, they applied for every single role. And I was like, okay.
Well, at least
no.
you know they're passionate about the project. Right?
Yes. I'm like, I feel like I have to find a spot for them somewhere,
Yeah,
you know?
right? Yeah.
How does it typically work? I think you mentioned that people will start with watching one movie or one series, and then they learn about other books. Do they typically go to the book first and read it, and then watch the movie that's on PassionFlix, or they start with the movie and then go back to the book?
It goes back and forth. So sometimes it's great to watch a movie first, because then you don't know what you're missing from the book, right? So you go and you watch the movie first, and you're like, wow, this is a really beautiful movie. I know if I go to the book, I can relive it again and get more details from their lives. Because we all know there's different. And again, I take the example of Harry Potter, I take the example of Pride and Prejudice. There's only so much that you can put in the movie. And while I love every adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, I love the book. There's just a little bit more in there.
Yeah.
But I'll watch that series, the 6-hour version of Pride and Prejudice, I'll watch that all the time. Yeah. And the same with our Gabriel's Inferno series. I'll watch all 9 feature films of that series that we made, because we did actually have to make that one much longer. So one book was 3 feature-length movies. We just couldn't fit it all in.
Yeah.
And so, but we'll go and watch that, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I'll go back to the book and just feel that. There's also something really wonderful about reading a book. It's very, it's a very, I don't know if you guys do a lot of reading, but I love to just sit there and you're just in your own world, and it's very peaceful, and you're drinking your tea or your wine or whatever you might have, and you just are creating this world in your head, which no movie can recreate.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
You think Lord of the Rings can recreate it, but it can't. It's still better in your head.
Yeah, and I imagine that's probably the hardest part of your job is adapting a book which everyone has the ideal picture in their own heads, right, and bringing it to life, but also, like John asked you earlier, is like making these hard editorial choices, like what stays on the cutting room floor, what makes it into the movie, and still maintain the integrity of the book, the way the author envisioned it, right?
Yeah. It's actually, editing. So that's one thing. We do go through the whole script and we make sure the script's right. And then you go and you film the movie. And then when you actually cut it all together and you have these extra scenes and you look at the story as a whole and the movie as a whole, which is a different genre than a book.
Yep.
But you look at it and you're like, that scene, while it's great on its own, does not serve this movie. It actually takes you out, or it makes it feel like the movie's slow, or something didn't work. So you have to pull that scene out. And then the movie plays really well. And I was like, wow, that plays really well. And you're like, there's that scene. It's such a great scene. And I just can't put it in the movie.
Yeah.
So we do have, occasionally we'll put in some deleted scenes and stuff. But you do have to look at a movie as its own genre, and how you can take an audience through this ride and get them to the end in a 2-hour block, basically. Sometimes it can be a little longer, but for the most part, it's about a 2-hour block, because that's what we want to watch. Very rarely do we want to watch a 3-hour movie.
Yeah. It's rare that you turn on Lord of the Rings for a marathon.
Yeah.
What's your vision for PassionFlix as far as like, where are you headed? Like, especially as we know, streaming in general is always changing. Netflix obviously has like changed the game with the starting of like the DVDs and all the way into like just being in your home. But what's your vision as the scenery is just always changing, even with things with AI and everything else being thrown at it. I mean, obviously it starts with the book, but what's your vision and for PassionFlix of the future? Well,
so PassionFlix ultimately is a distributor, and at this, it's a distributor of right now of movies and series and things like that. But I do think that PassionFlix has the ability to be the be-all and end-all for anything to do with love. So with that in mind, we have events, and so PassionCon is an event. We have the Passionista Choice Awards. We will have We have a lot of original music, so we will have concerts.
Oh, wow.
We are going to start publishing books. So we'll go into book publishing, and we will work
amazing.
with authors that can ultimately, we'll support their stories, or we will commission stories that we want to also see adapted for screen. Okay, great. So then we'll increase on that vertical. And in addition, I want to start a romance film festival that really focuses on encouraging other people in the world to make high quality romance content, and it'll be really fabulous and have great prizes and distribution. So it'll hopefully encourage more and more people to focus on positive content and stories about love. And then in addition, basically have one of the largest romance book fairs, book festivals, and events in the world. And that's what I want to do.
You heard it here.
I was like, I meant to tell you about that. She's the one that's going to do it.
Job security. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's big ambitions. I love it. It's like Sundance Festival for the romance genre. I love the music festival idea. It didn't really occur to me that you guys, music plays an important role in all movies.
Yep.
But especially in this genre, you have to have the right music and the right the lyrics and sets the right tone. So tell me a little bit more about the role of music, and then exploring this music festival idea. That's really unique.
Yeah. So we have, we don't have the ability to go and buy a Taylor Swift song or any of those things. We don't have those budgets. They're insanely expensive. It's also really hard to negotiate because they may not like, their song being in that movie or whatever it might be. So what we have done is we have found a lot of incredibly talented artists over time to write songs for us, specifically for our movies. And we have a Rockstar Romance coming out at the end of this year. And so we've been working on creating an entire album for this band so that we can, launch the band. And
So cool.
So we have an album of 8-9 songs that I have a wonderful director of music here who has been, working so hard and making sure that it's telling this character's story. So it has to support the book and support, because we were playing the music throughout the movie as well. And then this is that band's music, and we have to make sure that the fans are also going to love that music. So it's very much so, is it in the voice of these characters?
Yep.
Is it something that can support this movie? At the same time, do I love to listen to it?
Yeah.
And then, and so we brought on a team of people to write this music and these incredible songs. And then when we have our Passionista Choice Awards, we bring these artists out and they perform the songs for us at the awards ceremony.
How cool.
And then, as we expand, we'll be able to have more and more music.
What's the name of the band?
The band is called Stage Dive.
I love it. Wait, who came up with that name?
It's the author
Oh,
did, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's such a cool name.